Wow, the market is going absolutely crazy today. So let me get you caught up with what is going on and why it's going so crazy. For those of you who don't know, some of you have been asking me in the comments, and thank you so much for your question on YouTube. You were asking what is Ark Invest, and they're basically a financial institution that caters to ETFs. They currently have 5 ETFs on the market, and they're looking to have another ETF called ArkX, which is space exploration that I just mentioned. So basically what they do is disruptive innovation. I absolutely love their RK portfolio, which is all of their 14 technologies and all of the big ideas that they have for 2021. I also love their Ark G portfolio, which is in the genomics sector, and we're all about saving the world here, so this is definitely helping to save the world. This also has the largest returns in the genomics sector and in the whole portfolio. So if you don't know what genomics is, or you're just interested in learning about genomics and in investing in genomics but don't really understand much about it, I would definitely suggest going into ArkG, ARKG, because they've researched it thoroughly and have the best genomic stocks in the market. So let's get into RK, let's get into the news and some upcoming catalysts for them. As I mentioned, they are creating another Ark ETF, and I think this will be a sympathy play once we understand the names of this. So it's going to be ArkX, and once we know what they're investing in, I believe RK will go up substantially as well. So in the news, RK recently had a webinar and recently had a huge document of their big ideas. They do this every year just for people to understand what they believe is going to be the biggest disruptors in innovation for this year. So I'm going to go over the highlights of what Kathy Woods talked about. And if you want to see a full video about this, please comment below and let me know. So basically what they said, that they had 6 new ideas that are multi-year in length with 5 innovation platforms involved in 14 technologies. Number 1 is deep learning, which occurred because the human programmer is basically out of the equation for this. So they're data training machines, which is big data, iterative algorithms, and supercomputing power. So essentially, she said that machines are now training themselves through the deep learning. And thus, the training costs are going down 37% per year. Now, this is for autonomous cars, for Alexa, for TikTok. AI models built around deep learning are increasing tenfold, so computing power is needed in the year ahead. So this is going to be huge. They say that it will scale from $2 trillion, which it is currently, to $30 trillion in opportunity in the AI space, which is a 17% CAGR. By 2037, the internet will be mature and only 3% growth. So the next big thing really is deep learning and AI. Number 2, server processors are a big idea. As you know, Intel basically dominates the data center right now, with 92% servers having their processor, the x86. I believe that it will go down to 27% by 2030, and what will replace them is ARM and RISC-V, which will grow at an annual rate of 45% over the next 5 to 10 years. They mentioned that NVIDIA is trying to acquire ARM from SoftBank, but it really just depends on China. There may be some news that institutions are getting about the delay of this and whether it might or might not happen, but retail investors are not privy to that information, so I don't know much about that, but I will let you know once I find out any news. Number 3, virtual worlds is a big idea. This will happen in the gaming market first. So premium games and in-house game purchases are going to be 16% of the CAGR in the next 5 years, mostly from in-gaming purchases. Basically, gaming migrated from space to another space and has been evolving ever since. And we will see this again with AR and VR with a 59% CAGR. She recommends that the technology is almost there with the Oculus being sold out, so it was a success. Oculus is owned by Facebook, and they are doing AR and VR experiments exponentially. Number 4, we have digital wallets. And Kathy Woods, I love this phrase. She basically said it was a bank in our pocket. In the US, we have Cash App and Venmo, and in China is Alipay and WeChat Pay. So the pandemic basically made it go wild with e-commerce, and also, believe it or not, because of the virus itself, there's no germs with contactless payments. And I just looked on the internet and it said that credit cards are actually as scattered with germs as urinals at a train station. So make sure that you're putting Lysol on your Visa and MasterCard. Also, the customer acquisition of digital wallets is $20 versus the banks, which is up to $1,500. I believe that Venmo and Cash App, which is $250 to $700 per user, that's how much they get from each user. If they capture the shares of banking institutions and brokerages, they can scale that to $20,000 per user in the next 10 years. And this is basically half from e-commerce. Number 4 for the big idea is Bitcoin. We've seen many institutional investors go into Bitcoin through the grayscale GBTC because the SEC has a lot of rules about Bitcoin, and not many institutional investors, especially mutual funds, are actually allowed to be in Bitcoin. So they use grayscale and other companies that are using Bitcoin. Also, major corporations are substituting Bitcoin for cash, and this started with a company called MicroStrategy. Square is also using 5% of its assets in Bitcoin, and PayPal and Cash App enable buy and sell on Bitcoin on their platforms. And last month, the OCC allowed banks to become nodes on any public blockchain to enable less costs and more efficiency for settlements. So basically, Bitcoin is going into the more traditional banking sector for settlements, and you can do this globally as well. And this is for Fidelity, ICE, CME, and Cambridge. The potential here is huge. If we see institutions going in deeper with Bitcoin, if they want a minimum volatility, it can go up to $200,000 in price. And if they want maximum Sharpe ratios or maximum exposure, it can go up to $500,000 in price. There was also mentioned of the new SEC Gensler, who is actually very pro Bitcoin, and that's because they understand it more. What I've found in my walk of life is that if you understand Bitcoin a little bit more, you're more invested in it. And for those who don't understand it, are very anti-Bitcoin. So I think the more that people know about it, the better it is. And right now, institutions are using it to hedge against any inflation that we may see in the future. Number 5, EV. So 2020 EV sales were at $2.2 million, which was a 25% increase, and traditional automobiles were decreased. This has happened 2 years in a row, and they think it will continue down that path. EV CAGR is at an increase of 82% per year for the next 5 years because they believe the costs will continue to decline. And actually, as EVs are declining in price, they believe that traditional cars will be stagnant. So eventually, EV cars will be less expensive than traditional gasoline cars. There's also an opportunity with ride-hailing, and specifically autonomous ride-hailing. Right now, it's a $150 billion industry with not autonomous cars, and that costs about $2 per user per mile. Once we start having autonomous ride-hailing, it could cost 25 cents per mile. So there's a big opportunity for that. They believe there will be a $150 billion industry to a $6 trillion industry by 2030. And autonomous taxi platforms will be valued at $4 trillion. You guessed it. Tesla is in the running to start with this. They're probably going to start with regular taxi hailing services, but they will go into autonomous. BYD is also doing this as well. Number 6, drones. Now, this is not a very new idea, but they're putting more investments into this. Once they see the collapse in delivery costs and hardware costs, and the AI is intelligent enough to be propelled into the air, they see this as a huge growth opportunity. And they see this scaling the parcel drones to $114 billion in 2030. Now, number 7 is what we talked about earlier. It's Orbital Aerospace. And the first one is satellite enabling connectivity for 3 billion people who don't have broadband access. And there's actually 42 million people in the US, which I did not know about, who do not have broadband access. So this is a huge opportunity as well. Once the satellite costs are down, and so are the rocket launching costs, there's going to be a huge convergence. And the TAM for this, or the total addressable market opportunity for this, in the US alone, with 42 million people, is $10 billion. And $40 billion globally. So this is huge. They saw some success with the Falcon 9 booster, which is a reusable rocket that was found with SpaceX, and they've done 9 visits of this so far. So they're in the development stage, but they think this is essential. Number 2 is hypersonic flight. This is again the Orbital Aerospace. It's a $270 billion opportunity annually. Their estimates are very conservative. Now, if you don't know what this is, basically it's just a very fast plane. So imagine going from where I am in New York City all the way to the other end of the earth, China, and that would take you about 2 hours instead of 19 hours. And of course you would pay a lot more for that. Number 8, 3D printing. So basically this has been beaten down so much due to the vaccine. Everything was stopped. This is a very high-priced environment, but they say it will scale 60% annualized rate in the next 5 years. And this will be due to the aerospace, which will accelerate it. So it's a huge opportunity. Number 9 is genomics, and this can be found in the Ark G fund as well as the Ark K fund. I believe a long-read sequencing is ready, and that ticker symbol PACB is the leader in long-read sequencing. To sequence a whole genome is about $1,500 currently, and the CGS is about $1,500 as well. They noted that the detection of cancer for very, very early stages in liquid biopsies is good for short reads. They believe the market will move to long read sequencing, except for the liquid biopsies, and have a CAGR of 82%. Multiscreening tests is also a big idea. It will soon be for all 40-year-old adults and up, and cost less, and the DNA sequencing will cost less. This will help find cancer earlier in the future. This is a $150 billion market. And as far as curing cancer is concerned, gene therapies are the next frontier. So we have allogenic, which is off-the-shelf cells, is a lower cost way of fighting cancer because they basically transplant that into a cancer patient's body, and it's trained to fight cancer. They believe this will explode the market oncology gene therapy by 20 times. And all of this will cause a $260 billion market. So it's a huge growth opportunity. They've seen some success in trials and in early stages. Now, when I think of this, I think of Exact Sciences, I think of Edit, I think of GH, I think of TMO, Selectus, and Fate Therapeutics. So what's the big idea? So for Ark K, just look out for those catalysts of Cathie Wood's going into several different stocks. It should send her Ark K portfolio going up exponentially. And I would just follow her on Twitter on Twitter for latest updates. Once her email comes out every single day, you can sign up for that to see what she's trading daily. She's very transparent, and it usually sends the stock price up. Also, they have a very big exposure in Tesla and in CRISPR. So if there's any big news about that, just be aware that the stock price of Ark will go up for that one as well. Please leave a comment below and let me know which stocks you would like me to do a full in-depth video on, so you don't miss out on any great juicy stocks that have a huge upside that are very long term. And please leave a comment down below letting me know what else you would like to see as far as investing goes. And please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. I love every single one of you. Go out and make some money and be wealthy and save the world. Bye, Rayliners.